Alright, today I want to hack together a new animation from the animations provided in the Giant Worm package. So what we're going to actually do, and let me press play here and show you what we're going to be doing. Um, so we've got the Giant Worm, and he's got some cool animations, and in our animator we can look at the attack ones. We've got the forward attack, which is like a snap. We got this attack where he rolls around, attacks everything in this radius, and attack 3, which is his casting, where he casts this poison-ish fog out there. I want to create a new one though. I want to create one where he kind of throws his head back and spits a ball up in the air, which will then land on our player. And to do that, we're going to actually use the idle break. Let's check that out real quick. He squirms around, stretches his neck, and then boom, right there, his head goes back. And I'm thinking, if I can get that part, I can make that into an attack. And so we're going to create a new trigger here. Let me pause this to create the trigger. We're going to create a new trigger called cast 1. And we're going to create a new, we can just copy probably, copy and paste, Command V, this idle break 0, and we're going to rename this cast 1. Now it's idle break 0, and in our any state we're going to make a transition to the cast 1, and let's use idle. Now this is where these sliders come in handy. Cast 1 is a pretty long animation. It's actually the idle, and if we bring this through, we can see all this, and we can tell that the head goes back right about there, so we actually only care about this part of the animation. So if we can isolate and start the animation right at that point, this should work. So we're going to drag this over. I'm going to increase the transition time a little bit so it's a little more smooth. There you go. So in this animation now, from idle, if we press play here, he's idling and then he throws his head back. Boom. And at that point, I'm going to have him spit some stuff straight up in the air. And then after cast 1, we're going to go back to idle, just like the other animations we have. So now, when I'm playing the game, let me step back a little bit. If I click the cast 1, oh, I didn't set the conditions here. Let me set that condition to cast 1. Now again, I'm changing this in during play. This will not actually change back when I'm done. So this fix is an easy fix. Cast 1, boom, I was going to spit it up, and that's it. It's a brand new animation now. It's just a little part of the idle break, and it's going to create a new animation. Now we have to do one other thing here, and that is to add a trigger, not a trigger, an event on the animation. It's going to be similar to our other event, which is on attack 3. So let's check that out first. We're going to go into our model, giant worm, and select attack 3. Now, if we go and click on the events here, we see these little flags. These are the events, and they're basically going to call this function and the function in the scripts that are attached to the object. For instance, start magic spell and stop magic spell, and they can carry an integer or a float or a string or even an object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate down to the idle break right here. And I'm going to go to the position I want the ball to spit out of the mouth. I'm going to click this flag. I'm going to say cast spell and put an integer of 1 there. I'm going to pass an integer of 1, which means spell 1. And then I'm going to apply that. Now, at that point in the animation, that cast spell function is going to be called. Now, I don't have that yet. So if we actually play the animation through, let me find my worm. If we play the animation through, cast 1, at that point we get an error here. Cast spell has no receiver. So now let's go back to our demo. We're going to call this one worm magic. Let's open that up. So a couple things here. We're going to do a variable magic particles. We'll call it magic spells. And it's going to be a game object array. I'm assuming that there may be more magic spells in the end. So this will allow us to have multiple magic spells. So let's add another variable. I like to do character animator, and this is our animator controller. And at the start, we're going to assign that get component animator, and we're going to cache that value because we're going to use it multiple times throughout the game. And we're going to need a cast spell, and spell number is an integer. That's the variable that was passed. We have it as 1 now. You know what? I'm going to change that one thing because as an array, the arrays start at 0. So let's go back to our model, go back to our idle break, go back to our events, click that flag again, and change the int to 0. Because in the end, our first array will be 0. And what we're going to do is we're going to say new variable, new spell, object equals instantiate the magic spells spell number at our magic spawn positions spell number. We'll get into that in a second. And quaternion.neon.identity. I do not know what that does exactly, but it works. I'm not sure why. We also need to add up here our variable for magic spawn position, and this is going to be transform array. This is going to throw an error if we don't have these filled in. So let's double check that we have them before we call this, and so we don't get a fatal error or a null value error. So we're going to say if magic spells spell number, if that's assigned, and magic spawn position spell number is assigned. Only if those are assigned will we create a new particle. Alright, I spelled instantiate wrong. I fixed it though. So basically it was saying that there was no appropriate version of instantiate. That means one of these values was actually incorrect, and it turns out the middle one I had passed in a transform. I needed to pass in the transform position because this takes a prefab, a position, and a rotation. Let's double check that. Alright, so now when that plays, let's apply the settings. I didn't even apply the settings from before to fix that script. And you know what? Let's do one quick callback here just to make sure that we're doing it right. We're going to say print cast spell, and then we're going to print out the spell number here. I like to make sure that things are going according to plan. So let's see. Animator cast 1, it's going through, and cast spell 0. Index out of range 0. So we check this, and we just want to make sure that we have at least one element here. Alright, now we do need one other thing. We have this magic spawn position, but we don't know what that is. So let's look at this worm, and the spawn position is basically going to be the point at which we want the magic spell to be created. So I'm going to open up the root of this. We're going to go head control. We're going to basically put an object inside the head of this creature. So you might need to play around with this, the placement of this, depending on what model you're using. But I like to create a sphere so I can see it. And just make it kind of small, say 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, and then I'll raise it up. Oops. To where kind of I want the spawn. There we go. I'm inside his head now, and I can see this looks about right. We can always change that later. And when you are fine with the position, just remove the component, the mesh renderer, the collider, and this mesh filter. Now it's basically an empty game object, and let's name that magic spawn position 1. And in our script, we're going to just drag that into our element 0 for magic spawn position 1. So let's take the mushroom prefabs, mushroom magic. Let's bring that as our magic spell. Mushroom magic is this little spinning disc, and I believe it moves. It has smoke. So in theory, it should go forward or backwards. I'm not sure what it does, but let's see what happens. Because now in our mushroom here, we have mushroom magic at spawn position 1. Let's give it a try. And there we go. It does get created. As you can see, it's going off in the wrong direction. I want it to go straight up, but it's going kind of forward in its own direction. And that's probably because it has logic on itself to keep going forward, and it's not pointing straight up. So what I need to do is add a little logic to make that go straight up. I know that this script, if you look at Magic Mushroom, has a magic mover script that basically just transforms it forward. But I'm going to keep that. I want it to keep going it's forward, but instead I want to have it facing straight up. So we're going to say new spell object dot transform dot look at. Transform dot look at, and we're going to say new spell object. Spell that right. Spell object transform dot position plus vector 3 0 1 0. Now 1 is the y. This should be saying look at your position but 1 unit higher. Click out, go to animator, cast the spell, and sure enough, now it's going straight up in the air. So there's going to have to be more logic if we want the magic spell to come down, but that's going to be in another video. What we've basically done now is created a new animation using another animation, idle break, to cast, and assigned a spell and a spawn position to the event via a function. So hopefully this made sense to you. There's a lot you can do with hacking together the animations. So enjoy.